You're watching The Buck Stops Here. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. Our big focus tonight, a crowdsourced cautionary list of sexual harassers in academia has sparked a polarising debate among Indian feminists. Raya Sarkar, who claims to be a 24-year-old law student at an American university, says she was inspired by the Me Too campaign to create a list to warn students about professors using first-hand accounts from survivors. She argues, given how college administrations function, these harassers will continue to hold their positions of power even if survivors use existing processes and mechanisms to complain. A group of Indian feminists who responded to that list say they were dismayed that this naming and shaming was without context or explanation, and they are now facing a huge backlash. We ask tonight, does silence equal complicity? And by that logic, are we all guilty? Well, joining us on this conversation tonight, Surabhi Kanga, editor of the Caravan magazine, here with me in the Delhi studios. Mehra Sood, advocate of the Supreme Court. Karuna Nandi, also advocate of the Supreme Court, also joining us on this discussion tonight. Mehra Sood, let me begin with you. A lot of people seem to have a certain level of discomfort with a list where simply names are being put out, and these are all presumably very eminent academicians. They're being named, but without any kind of context, without any kind of explanation, without any kind of due process. These are, many of them, unsubstantiated claims. Does that make this list somewhat problematic?
See, I think the first thing that I would like to say is that a lot of the analysis that has surrounded this list and the issues that it raises seems to conflate two issues that I would like to separate, because my views on both of them are quite separate.
Okay.
The first is the issue of an online outing or publication naming and shaming. And the second is the anonymity with which it is done. Right? And I think these two need to be looked at separately. Okay. As far as online naming and shaming is concerned, in principle, I'm okay with it. I don't necessarily believe that it is only through a legal process that you can say that somebody has sexually harassed you.
Right.
I think that there is a multiplicity of fora. The legal processes often fail people. We don't even need to go that far back into history. Just a couple of recent cases, one involving students from Raya's own university. You know, legal systems do fail victims. It's not a surprise. But I think that there is a requirement, there should be a requirement of at least, whether it is in a legal forum, whether it is through an article, whether it is through a crowdsourced list on Facebook.
Okay.
I don't think, I can't personally put a value on each of these, but you should certainly put your own name to it. The person should have an equal opportunity to respond to the allegations that you've made. You know, and that's why I don't really have a problem with this online forum, because the person has equal access, the accused person has equal access to put their own side of the story forward, but they can't do that if it's an anonymous sort of allegation.
Right, fair enough.
Right?
I want to
so
take
that's my big problem.
Okay.
And the reason I have a problem, it's not just with the lack of defense opportunity available to an accused, but also for the very dangerous trend it sets. You know, I've seen a lot of defense of this kind of tactic saying that, you know, it's different if anonymous lists are made by, say, a majoritarian state or a dominant community to harass minorities or vulnerable groups.
Yes.
But it's different when victims do it. And I find that a very problematic argument to make, because once you
fair enough. Lots of strands that you raise over there, and I want to take these up one by one. Mehra, I will come back to you. I want to raise the points that you have raised and take those across. Now, Surabhi, one of the main points that I think Mehra also raises over here is, where is the agency of the woman if her identity isn't disclosed? You know, that's one argument that we've heard a lot of, but there are very strong reasons why women do not speak out or complain. There's fear of being bullied, of being silenced, perhaps having their academic reputations ruined. So these are real concerns.
See, I think a couple of things that we have to think about here that Mehra pointed to. One, the idea that this list is absolutely unsubstantiated isn't exactly true. It's not exactly fair. I understand that we can debate the neutrality of this.
No, but there are,
unsubstantiation.
having said that, Surabhi, there are some men on this list who have actually been found guilty of sexual harassment by due process. Many have not. So that distinction, I think one has to be aware of.
That's a distinction that's definitely needs to be made, and I don't think that at any point that distinction should be forgotten, or that even Raya herself, who's put out the list, would probably deny that. To address the point that yes, of course, women face bullying, women face harassment, women face the threat of losing their careers. Now, to think about the power differential here between the victims who are making the list, or survivors, whichever the terminology here is, versus the men who have been named, I think there is this misplaced fear among us that if we name a person who is innocent, we will ruin their careers. To be honest, no data when it comes to sexual harassment and claims against men having done this sexual harassment really backs this up. I mean, very rarely, and we can look at cases in India itself, very rarely have men lost their careers to this kind of allegation.
That's an interesting point, and maybe Karuna can respond to that. Surabhi here saying none of the men on this list will actually suffer anything more than a minor debatable damage in reputation, and the effect of silence on the victims, on the other hand, is far more damaging. Is that something you'd agree with, Karuna?
A lot over the history of the attempt to develop progressive laws that address sexual harassment, that address sexual assault, there have been a large number of what we call in science and in the law, false negatives. A lot of people who were guilty, who were exonerated. Far more importantly, a large number of people who were sexually assaulted and who were sexually harassed that did not even trust the justice system enough to go and make a complaint. So every woman who does so now is, and is something in the nature of a hero, because there's a lot of time, there's a lot of investment, and if she gets pro bono help, then that's fine. But the legal aid is not great, and witness protection programs don't properly exist. When you see ICCs, when you see sort of, whether they're in academia, GS Cash of the UGC is much better, but it doesn't adequately address the problem. And networks of power, the way power is structured, is weighted hugely against the woman. I think we would all agree with that. I think there's no issue with that. Now, the thing is that I see this very much as an act of civil disobedience. What is civil disobedience? Civil disobedience says, I know what the law is, and I know that I might be sued for defamation. I think she's saying something about...
when she actually says being a Singaporean citizen and living in the US, she feels emboldened, and perhaps she feels she will perhaps be less open to a defamation suit.
While that is debatable, the thing is that her act is very much an act of civil disobedience. What she is saying is that I know that what I am doing is not legal. I know that I am doing but I feel that I am doing something that is extremely important, and I am here and I am doing it. I am identifying myself, and I am ready to face the consequences if those consequences come, and I will fight the case. But so it's an act of civil disobedience. So the point I'm making here, though, Ankita, is that I think this level of disillusionment and the fact that women from, Delhi and Cochin and Kolkata are trusting somebody they never met over the internet, the point that Nishida was making, and they are writing to her and trusting her. And trusting her to be the gatekeeper of truth. Which is something that is troubling in a larger sense, obviously, but I don't think it's anyone's case that due process should be binned. I don't think it's anyone's case that this is a trope that should continue and should happen all the time. I think this is more a disruption of the system.